Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for finding time to be with us. The show is Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to bring you the latest news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and we do have so much in store for you this afternoon. We start with the latest from Angola, and Angola's Attorney General Elder Peter Gross says a post-mortem examination into the death of former President Jose Eduardo dos Santos has ruled out poisoning. A court in Barcelona had authorized the post-mortem following a request from his daughter, Jose dos Santos, who had alleged he had been murdered. Mr. dos Santos died in Barcelona Hospital on Friday, where he had been undergoing medical treatment. The family's lawyer had denounced moves by the Angolan government to return the body to his homeland for a state funeral, saying he wanted a private burial in Spain. And we head over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the DRC on Monday officially became the 7th member of the East African Community after depositing the instruments of ratification to the bloc's headquarters in Arusha in Tanzania. Minister of Foreign Affairs Christophe Lutundula presented the documents to EAC Secretariat and Secretary General Peter Muthuki, who described the development as significant for DR Congo and the community. Member states approved DR Congo's request to join the bloc in April, and the country's parliament ratified the decision in June. Democratic Republic of Congo's president retweeted about the latest development. And then we head over to Tunisia, and the President Kais Saied has warned against interference with the referendum later this month on a controversial new constitution. The president said any attempts to interfere with the voter registration and polling station change processes must be addressed. And he said that he will not tolerate the actions of those who want to make the referendum fail. The president made the remarks when he met the head of the country's electoral body, Farouk Bouska, at the Carthage Palace on Monday. It comes amid renewed opposition against the 25th July referendum on the new constitution, which the president has promoted. On Monday, an opposition alliance, the National Salvation Front, renewed its calls for Tunisians to boycott the referendum. Critics accused President Saied, who sacked the government last July and dissolved parliament before seizing executive power, of trying to return the country to one-man rule, and he has since denied these claims. We head over to Somalia, and the new president, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, on Monday visited members of the Somali army receiving naval training in Eritrea. The soldiers have been undergoing 3 years of rigorous military training, according to Eritrea's information ministry. The ministry tweeted photos of President Mohamud with his Eritrean host, President Isaias Afwerki, during a visit to the port city of Mosawa, where they inspected military parade of speedboats of members of the Somali army. On Sunday, Eritrea State Television aired footage of the Somali soldiers in a parade. Former Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo was criticized for sending the troops, estimated to be thousands, to Eritrea. This followed claims that some of them fought alongside Eritrean soldiers in backing the Ethiopian army's offensive against rebel fighters in the Tigray region. And when you think about it, it now makes a lot of sense. And then we head over to Rwanda, and Paul Kagame's recent announcements that he is considering staying in power for another 20 years is bad news, but not a surprise. That is according to a Rwandan opposition leader who was speaking to RFI. Rwanda has few opposition parties, and President Kagame won 99% of the vote in the latest election 5 years ago, making it his third term in office, in a process which many outside the country dismissed as sham. Speaking on Monday, Bernard Ntaganda, who leads the opposition Social Imbarakuri party, said it was high time Mr. Kagame released his grip on power and probably resigned. And we go to South Sudan, and the death toll of cattle-related violence in Kapoeta, North County, Eastern Equatoria State, has risen to 235, with Peebo Area Deputy Chief blaming his youth for participating in the attack. Last week, more than 70 people were reportedly killed following a cattle raid, which the county authorities said were carried out by a coalition of youth from Budi, Lafon and Greater Peebo areas. When contacted on Monday, Kapoeta North County Commissioner Emmanuel Epone Lolinmo said a total of 235 have been confirmed dead, a figure that local media outlets could not independently verify. Meanwhile, Joshua Abula, Deputy Chief Administrator of Greater Pibor Administrative Area, confirmed some youth from his area were involved and similarly blamed them for crossing into Eastern Equatoria State for raid. Abula said Eastern Equatoria State Governor Louis Lobong informed him about the incident, adding the losses are not a surprise. I guess they're used to such killings, I suppose, if they're not a surprise. All right, we move over to Mali, and the authorities have arrested nearly 50 soldiers from Ivory Coast who came to Mali to work for a contracting company of the United Nations mission in Mali. The government made the announcement on Monday, calling the Ivorian soldiers mercenaries in a move that could raise tensions between the two West African countries. 2 aircraft arrived at Mali's International Airport on Sunday, with the 49 soldiers with their weapons and ammunition of war, as well as other military equipment, and that is according to the Malian government spokesperson, Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga. He said they were illegally on the national territory of Mali, and the transitional government considers them mercenaries. UN mission spokesperson Elvia Salgado said these Ivorian soldiers are not part of the MINUSMA contingents, but have been deployed for several years in Mali as part of logistical support on behalf of the contingents of the MINUSMA team. He said that the arrival as relief would have been communicated beforehand to the national authorities. They are working for a German company that is contracted by the UN mission known as the Sahelian Aviation Services. Maiga said they would put an end to the protection activity of the Sahelian Aviation Services by foreign forces and demand their departure from Malian territory. And then we go to Nigeria, and civil rights advocacy groups. A group, Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, has called on President Major General Muhammadu Buhari, who's retired, to resign immediately if the job is too tough for him. Horiwa, that is the short for the Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, said this in a statement on Tuesday, calling on the president to resign to minimize the damage his crass incompetence and gross dereliction of duty would cause the country if he stayed on till May 29, 2023. A local media outlet had reported that Buhari, in a statement signed by his senior special assistant on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, described his 7 years in office as tough, adding that he was eager to go. 7 years in office was tough, adding that he was eager to go. He said this when he received some governors of All Progressive Congress, legislators and political leaders at his residence in Daura, Katsina State during the Eid el-Kabir celebrations. Buhari had also called on the striking academic staff union of the universities to consider the plight of the country's future generations as the strike stretched into the 6th month. And then still staying in Nigeria, and a former governorship candidate in Rivers State, Tonya Prince-Wall, has dumped All Progressive Congress, citing the Muslim a ticket for the presidential election in 2023. The party's presidential candidate, Bola Tinubu, had picked former governor of Borno State, Senator Kashim Shettima, as his running mate. Prince-Wall, a philanthropist, chieftain of the APC and an ally to the former Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amaechi, contested the governorship position in the state under the Labour Party in 2015. Prince-Wall, while expressing his dismay over the choice of the party in fielding a Muslim-to-Muslim ticket, said he could not argue for equity in his state and defend inequality in the country. Okay, and we end our bulletin this afternoon from South Sudan, and SPLM party has accused the main opposition SPLM-IO of denying it from campaigning in some counties under the control of its commanders, an accusation rejected by Mashar's party. The ruling party says it launched its campaigns and registration of some members in March this year, but some of the in-position commanders refused to allow its cadres to conduct political activities in some parts of the country. The SPLM, however, did not specify which areas. Peter Lamboth is the interim Secretary General for SPLM. Speaking to reporters in Juba on Friday, Lamb claims that since March this year, his party registered more than 4.5 million members in South Sudan, and the numbers continue to grow. All right, so that is the latest now. News from across the continent. Of course, some of this news continue to be developing stories, like the issue of Mali, like the issue of, Nigeria. I'm not really, I am surprised, but not quite. APC is the ruling party right now. The presidential candidate for next year's election is a Muslim, and there had been some threats before, some sections of the country who are saying that now that APC, being a major party, had picked a Muslim, so it will be appropriate for the deputy to be a Christian or somebody else from another religion, but not necessarily a Muslim, and that the said would allow for equality or equity, whichever you choose to look at it. And so I was reading some news that are looking for it on the BBC on yesterday, I think on Sunday. And I think one of the leading Christian organizations, after that announcement was made, they said, they will not rally Christians to now support APC. They will make sure that majority of Christians in that country do not vote. Nigeria's majority of the population is Muslim, followed very closely by Christians, which forms a very huge chunk of the population there. So it has been argued that for the interest of equity or equality, there should be that religious consideration to ensure that everybody feels represented, everybody feels their interests are present and represented in the higher hierarchy of the leadership of the country. So there has been an attempt before to ensure there's that balance as far as religion is concerned. I think this is very dicey. Religion is a very slippery matter and a very sensitive matter. So, but sometimes if that is what is required. There are certain things and parameters that have to be considered in every country has its own issues and agendas and governance, and perhaps how the people would like to feel represented fully as far as leadership is concerned. And very few countries in Africa you'll find that religion plays a role, but in the case of in the case of Nigeria, I think religion is a big thing. We've seen how those fights have happened. We've seen sometimes even Christians from the south saying they're being targeted, during these cattle raids and things like that. They're being targeted because they're allegedly Christians, and we've seen numerous occasions when the herders are attacking the farmers and things like that. Religion has been thrown in there as a motivating factor to some of these heinous acts that have been happening. So religion is a very weighty matter as far as the politics of Nigeria is concerned. So I don't know if APC was just tone deaf or was just dead, not fully alive to the issues, and perhaps do not understand why it was important for them to have a deputy who is not Muslim. And I don't know how that will affect its possibilities of clinching and staying in power after President Buhari has left. He's leaving next year, and so I think that will be left for the people of Nigeria to decide if that is something that they would like to look at as a barometer as far as choosing their next government is concerned. But even with that, we know Nigeria has been plagued with a lot of issues, especially to do with insecurity. And the current deputy president, the current vice president, I think came number 3 in that when they were voting to get the next flag bearer after President Buhari resigns. I think he was number 3. And he was asked while he was campaigning, he said he feels his government has done very well, specifically on matters security, and should he be elected, then he is looking forward to do the same thing President Buhari is doing. And when you think about it, what has President Buhari done as far as addressing the issues of insecurity is concerned? Not much. So maybe he's just wanted to come back and do nothing, as we have seen the current government do under their leadership, both him and President Buhari. Of course, the backstops with the Commander-in-Chief, which is retired Major General Muhammadu Buhari. His leadership has been lackluster as far as addressing the most pressing issues in Nigeria is concerned. And we talk about that here. And we criticize, but based on facts and what is happening in the country. And we're not the only people who feel the same way among other Nigerians. Now, there is a group of human rights. They call themselves Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, in short, HURIWA. And they are responding to statements President Buhari made over the weekend during the celebration of Kabir celebrations. And President Buhari was speaking to was speaking at during those celebrations, and in a statement signed by his senior special assistant on media and publicity, Gabashew described his 7 years in office as tough, adding that he was eager to go. I think that will be quite a reprieve to a lot of Nigerians, except anyway, they expected that he will go because his second and last term is ending. And 7 years in office, he said, were very tough. And he said this when he received some governors of all the Progressives Congress, some governors of his party and legislators and political leaders at his residence in Daura. So he said this has not been easy and he can't wait to leave. And I think President Buhari has just been sitting there waiting for the day that he has to just say goodbye and leave. Remember, he did not even show up to his own inauguration. Was it a celebration? Didn't even happen. He did not even show up for his second term. So I don't know if he was pushed to run for a second term or Buhari was actually meant to run, or he even wanted to run. He has had some health issues that sometimes have kept him away out of the country for longer periods of time, and other issues that he has had to battle. So a lot of factors, but maybe it will be left for Nigerians to decide, maybe how they will remember the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari, and how much he has done. So this group, HURIWA, the Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, is saying, come on, you can leave now. Don't even wait for, next year, for May next year when the next president will be inaugurated. We still have between now and May next year about maybe slightly less than a year. So if you are tired and if this job is too hard for you, there's no need for you to continue staying there, because your continued staying in that office means that we will continue suffering, insecurity will continue going up, and other issues that are plaguing Nigeria will continue happening. So they're saying, if you're tired and if this is too much for you, you have no business waiting for next year. You can leave right now. You can leave right now, you could resign right now and just make it easier for the both of us, because you can't wait to go home. And also we can't wait for you to be gone. So instead of you dragging it until the end of your tenure next year, how about you do it right now, since you're already tired? And I think the way President Buhari has been acting and has been handling this office, truly, this is a man that maybe is just tired, or maybe he underestimated the issues in Nigeria today compared to when he was the president but under the military many years ago. The issues then were different from what he had to deal with now when he was the president. So I don't know if he was aware of some of the responsibilities, and I don't know if he was cut out for this. And so, but I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will agree that there are some very critical areas that President Buhari would have done much better job, but he failed to do that. So he's saying he can't wait. He's eager to go home. Yeah. And you still have until next year. Elections will be held in February, and then after that, I think there's a period just in case there's anybody challenging the elections, and then the inauguration will be happening on May next year. So there you go. So Nigerians, there you go. That is your president. He's already tired leading you, but you have to put up with that until the end of the tenure that is next year. So I would like for us to talk about this story that I've been meaning for us to look at, but we've not had time to have this show for a few days now, and that is the death of former president of Angola, Jose Eduardo dos Santos, who died in the city in Barcelona, Spain on Friday, after his family alleged that, there was a conspiracy to kill him. So they had insisted that before he's buried, then they have to carry out an autopsy. And his third daughter, Chize dos Santos, had requested for the autopsy, and political enemies, she said, did not want him to back the opposition in next month's Angolan elections. And dos Santos, who died at the age of 79, he died in Spain, and he was in Spain for medical treatment and died after a cardiac arrest. And he was in power for 38 years. Right now, I think President Paul Biya and that President Paul Biya of Cameroon and the President of Equatorial Guinea, I think they have surpassed his record. Until then, he was the longest serving president in Africa, 38 years. I think right now Paul Biya is doing probably 41 or thereabout. And the other one is ahead, maybe 42 or 43, the president of Equatorial Guinea, the one that the son is the deputy president? Yes, that one. Okay, so after 38 years, he will surprise many people. He stepped down in 2017 and was succeeded by João Lourenço. That is the current president right now. And this current president, they were very good friends. In fact, had served in his government in different capacities. So a President dos Santos handpicked, João Lourenço to replace him, who is from the same party, MPLA party. And then, of course, he has pursued a vigorous anti-corruption campaign. That is the current president. And he found himself targeting his predecessor, who, remember, handpicked him for that position. And so lawyers of the dos Santos family have denounced move by the Angolan government right now to return his body, because the Angolan government under the president now, João Lourenço, they're planning for a state funeral. I mean, this guy was the president there for 38 years, so it's only befitting, I don't know, but it's only befitting that maybe he receives a state funeral and a state burial. Okay, but the family is saying no. That was not our father's wishes, and I will tell you why in a short bit. So this looks like it's going to be another Robert Mugabe situation here playing out. Remember how that played out when Robert Mugabe died, and the family, through his wife, said no. Mugabe said he did not want to be buried at the hero's corner. He did not want even state anything. And current president Mnangagwa had to swallow a lot of things and had to, concede to a lot of things and a lot of demands from the family, just to ensure that they're able to gloss over and just give Mugabe the best send-off they could possibly give under the circumstances at that time. So this could be another unraveling of what we saw during Mugabe's time. And another of his daughters, Isabel dos Santos. Isabel dos Santos is the richest woman in Africa. Yes, according to Forbes, she is the richest woman in Africa. And right now she has been charged with mismanagement and embezzling public funds when she headed the state oil farm Sonangol. She has denied the charges and says she is the target of political persecution. So the death of the former president during an election year represents a big challenge to the MPLA and President Lourenço. Dos Santos and President Lourenço met for the last time over Christmas last year at the late president's official residence in Luanda. He had traveled. He had left the country, I think, a couple of years ago. He had left the country. He had decided to leave the country, but he came back, and he's come back twice. He's come back twice to the country, and the last he was in that country was over Christmas last year, and the president went to meet up with him, and it seems that not even this move by President Lourenço was enough to repair the already damaged relations. And I think their kids, either one of the son from one side and the daughter from the other side, even were engaged to get married. I don't know if that marriage ever happened, because already there were frictions between these old allies. And for President Lourenço, during the Santos wanted to bring the Santos body back as soon as possible. And for him, being that it is an election year in Angola, this is needed, but not in the best way. Maybe that's why the family is fighting this, to make a political statement. And maybe perhaps according to the government, this could help in reuniting the MPLA party. And the war, when Dos Santos, who was just 37 when he became the head of state, he will be remembered for ending a long-running civil war in the early 2000s, with his supporters dubbing him the architect of peace. The war lasted 27 years. I'm sure we are all familiar with the long, bloody civil war that happened in Angola for 27 years and ravaged the country. And about 500,000 people are believed to have died in the conflict. But his legacy is marred by corruption and human rights violations during his time in power. I mean, if you stay in power for 38 years, at some point you'll just become something else. And I think it's just the case with our next door neighbor there in Uganda. When they come into power, you are celebrated, you do great things. And that was the case also with Mugabe. But when you overstay, you even rubbish all the good things that you found and you also build. So when those are the dangers when you overstay, in power. And so as we speak, his son was jailed for 5 years for fraud. Over 500 million US dollars was transferred from the National Bank of Angola to an account in the UK. Relationship between the Dos Santos family and the Angolan government. Her father worsened since he died. And as I mentioned there, President Lourenço, who was handpicked by Dos Santos to succeed him, has denied accusations that his government had any link to the former president's death. And I think the autopsy is out, and I think I read that on the first part of the news. So Dos Santos will be remembered, as I said, for ending the long civil war that happened in Angola, and the war that lasted for 27 years. It also drew in foreign powers, that war, with South Africa, then under white minority rule, sending troops to support UNITA, while Cuban forces intervened on the government side. Okay. So it also had some elements of external interference. And Dos Santos presided over a Marxist-oriented one-party state until the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War led to the MPLA and UNITA signing a peace accord. It was Dos Santos and UNITA's Jonas Savimbi face-off against each other in the first multi-party elections in Angola since independence. Dos Santos defeated Savimbi by a narrow margin, resulting in a second round being called, but Savimbi boycotted it, choosing to take up arms again. Just over a decade later, in February 2002, Dos Santos troops killed Savimbi and a peace deal was later negotiated with the new UNITA leadership. And so a new country was born, reconstruction and reconciliation were Dos Santos' main goals. At the time, he enjoyed a considerable popularity, as demonstrated by the victory of the MPLA in 2008 elections, which he won by 82% of the votes. However, of course, as I've mentioned there about his family, in subsequent years, accusations of high-level corruption, especially in the oil sector, mismanagement of the economy and a crackdown of political dissent dogged his administration. And Dos Santos, who gained the reputation of being a cold and distant president, would say very little on these matters publicly, while discontent against his regime grew, and it led to an increase in his personal and family security. So instead of addressing those issues, he said, you know what, I'll just hire more security to protect me and my family, and you all can continue making all the noise you want. So interesting, I mean. And I get a feeling that is, when you look at President President Museveni of Uganda. When you even hear him talk and how he addresses issues, I think those are the dangers of overstaying in power. He's quite disconnected with a lot of things. You know, when he talks, you would think he's actually speaking on behalf of a personal enterprise and not as a head of state. And that is the attitude that Dos Santos, later on adopted. And so instead of addressing the issues that were plaguing the country, what he did was increase his personal and family security. How nice. How nice. That is his choice of addressing the issues. And in one of his very rare sit-down television interviews in 2013, Dos Santos told Portuguese channel SIC that Angola was completely stable and that the groups opposed to his regime were very small and well identified. By then, nepotism was already rampant. He appointed close family members and friends to prominent positions in government, including his son, Jose Filomeno Dos Santos, also known as Zenu, as head of the Angola's Foreign Wealth Fund, and later his daughter Isabel Dos Santos as head of the state oil company Sonangol. She was said to have become Africa's richest woman during that time. Nepotism sounds familiar. President Museveni's wife is the minister of education. The son is the head of army in the country and other positions. I tell you, when it gets to a point, I think now because it's when you serve longer, it becomes a family enterprise and not a country anymore. So this is very similar to what Dos Santos did here. And increasingly, it appeared as though Angola was turning into a dictatorship, which with oppositional politicians, civil rights activists and journalists prosecuted or even killed in some instances. And one of the cases that became well known around the world and certainly affects Dos Santos' legacy was the arrest of 17 activists who were accused of crimes of rebellion and of plotting a coup. And guess what their crime was? They were found reading the book From Dictatorship to Democracy, a conceptual framework for liberation by American writer Jean Sharp in 2015. So they were found reading a book, and Dos Santos decided, you are dissidents, and so we have to deal with you accordingly, and for that reason we are plotting a coup, because how dare you read this book, okay? And in 2017, 38 years after first taking the oath of office, Dos Santos surprised many Angolans by stepping down, and he chose his former defense minister. Lourenço was then his defense minister. A year later, Dos Santos also resigned as leader of the MPLA. In his last speech to the party, he admitted that he had made mistakes during his long time in power. And he said that mistakes are an integral part of the improvement process. So it is said that we learn from mistakes. I wonder if he did. And he told the crowd, and I guess the crowd cheered. But his position was fragile at that point. So, as I said, his son, remember that he had put in a certain very important government parastatal, is now serving. His son Zenu, for example, was jailed for 5 years over fraud, like I said there earlier, and his daughter Isabel has been banned from entering the U.S. for involvement in significant corruption, according to the U.S. State Department. And in 2020, the BBC reported on leaked documents that revealed how she had made her fortune through allegedly exploiting her own country and corruption. At the time, Ms. Dos Santos, that is Isabel, said the allegations against her were entirely false and that there was a politically motivated witch hunt by the Angolan government. Soon after he left power, Dos Santos went into exile in Barcelona, Spain, where he has reportedly been treated for a long-term health condition that was never officially confirmed by his family members, and despite having been reported in the Angolan press for many years. He last visited Angola in September 2021, where he stayed until early 2022. During his time in the country, he met President Lourenço twice at his official residence. As I had mentioned there earlier, by bringing peace to Angola, he could have been remembered as a national hero, but his long time in office and in power, the oppressive measures he introduced and the corruption under his watch destroyed his reputation. So there you go. And that is a very short history about Dos Santos now. And so we will see if at all the family will agree for his body to be brought to be buried in Angola. But according to them, they're saying he wanted a very private funeral, and he did not want his body to be brought back to Angola but be buried in Barcelona there in Spain. So we shall wait and see how that will play out. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Enjoy the rest of your day and bye-bye.